Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of TechPixies and the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And for the last year, I have been running a mastermind. I called it the LevelUp Mastermind. I wanted to help women who'd gone through our social media program level up and move beyond social media and go into business. And I learned a lot. And what I want to share today on the podcast and in a series that we're going to do, it's a 3-part series. I want to talk about the 5 things you should be doing in your business to move the needle forward. Now, hear me when I say move the needle forward. This is really important because when I started coaching women from social media to business, I realized that there were a lot of things women were doing. They just weren't doing the things they needed to actually do to move the needle forwards. And it was on one of the coaching calls we had in the mastermind that one of our amazing members of the mastermind asked the question, what are we supposed to be doing in order to move the needle forward? Because they were doing a lot of stuff, but the businesses weren't taking up the momentum, picking up with the momentum they wanted them to. So I on the spot, I said, these are the 5 things you should be doing to move your business forward. And the reason I know these 5 levers is because I spent a lot of time doing the things that don't move the needle forward. And that's wasted a lot of money. It spent a lot of money, and it didn't get me into a place where we could move forward. In fact, I ended up having to let a lot of people go, not just one time, but twice. And I swore after the first time I would never do it again. So I know what it's like to focus on the wrong metrics in business, which is also why I have the authority to tell you what you should be focusing on, because it was by focusing on these 5 things that I was able to move the needle forward in our business in a time period where a lot of other businesses were folding. In fact, one of our biggest rivals disappeared overnight. So it is really interesting to understand what metrics actually matter when you're trying to build a business. So I'm not going to go into all 5 today, but I'm going to break it down over 3 sessions so that I can really go deep into each one of them. And then I'm going to be running a Business Beyond Social Masterclass where I'm going to talk about this and give you some practical tools and tips to move forward if you want to go beyond social and build a business. Let's start with social media because that's sort of the thing I've been doing for the last 8 years. You cannot be in business today and not have a social media presence. Maybe you can, but I don't know anyone who does. So what does social media do for you? It is a shop window. It's the ability for someone to sort of see what you're doing, what you're up to, get to know, like, and trust you. It's a place to build up an audience, a community of people that you're connected with. The mistake I see people make is they don't convert that social media following into an email list. And what I know from teaching the Social Media Superhero Bootcamp and also my own, knowing of actually doing it is that your social media sales are never going to compare to your email sales. And I learned that from, every mentor that I've ever had in the business space has taught me that. In fact, there was one point when I sort of realized they were all teaching the same thing. Like I'd paid all of these gurus lots of different money and they were all teaching me the same thing. And I just I hadn't clocked it. I didn't understand it until I understood it, which is the sales are in the mails. Now that's my phrase. I've been saying that for years. It's something that came to me once when I was teaching the boot camp. The sales are in the mails. You do not make sales on social media the way that you make sales via email, full stop. So you have to get people off of social media and get them on to a mailing list. Now, even better if you can get their phone number as well, because then you can have real conversations with real people and it's not always digital. But let's just focus on getting people off of social media and on to email. A lot of people are teaching DM tactics. How do I have DM conversations with people? And DM conversations are great. And it's another inbox, but it's an inbox you don't own. It's an inbox you can't message anytime you want easily. You have to individually DM people, or you have to use third-party software to multiply the DMs. So DMing is not a bad strategy. It's a great strategy. In fact, I'm going to give you a really great strategy to use your DMs in order to get people onto your mailing list. But the thing that I would really encourage you to be doing is creating something called a lead magnet. And the lead magnet gets people off of social media and onto your mailing list. Now, here's the deal though. If you've got people off of social media and on to your email list, you actually have to email them. That's a requirement for your business to move forward. So these are the two things I want to focus on today, okay? You need to create weekly social media content. Now, I am not a huge fan of daily social media content. I'm a big fan of weekly social media content, partly because I want you to preserve your energy around the content that you create. I want you to create really good content. I want you to create content that you've thought about. I want you to create content that makes an impact on people. Now, to be fair, I'm building the TikTok module at TechPixies, and TikTok's a different beast. It's actually the more videos you create in the shorter period of time, the faster your account's going to grow. Now, that's a strategy probably for a short term to get to a certain level of following, and then you can decide what to do. However, I know people that are continuing on that TikTok treadmill, shall we call it, and they keep growing and growing and growing. And there's things that come off the back of that, and there's a long game in there, but you get really good at creating short form content, and it's repeatable content that you can rinse and repeat. There are actual real patterns of content that you can just rinse and repeat. And if you want to know more about those patterns, go and listen to my podcast interview with Dr. Vanita Ratan. She grew a TikTok account from nothing to 1 million followers in 2 years. And she talks about that repeatable content. I tested it out and got 25,000 views within 48 hours. So it works. So trust me, go listen to that podcast episode. It's a really good episode if you want to use TikTok as part of your strategy. But that's the point. That's just one part of the strategy. There are many other networks you can use, and you don't have to be on TikTok. YouTube, you can create weekly content. In fact, I know someone who created weekly content for a really long time, and then she had such a large following that she now creates monthly content because she's got such a large subscriber list. Again, almost 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and she can actually spend a month creating a video, and people are waiting for it. It's like a movie that comes out every month. So the tactics for social media change as your business changes and grows. But I'm a huge fan of weekly content. And the reason I like weekly content is Neil Patel, someone I've followed for a long time. In fact, I just listened to him tell his story. It was a brilliant story. He was 15 years old when he started in business. He couldn't find a job, so he created a website, as you do, create a jobs board website. And then that wasn't making him any money. So he had to learn how to get traffic to it. And so he became this traffic expert. And that's literally what happened when he was 16 years old. He was telling someone, he gave a talk on how he drove traffic to his jobs board website. And someone said, well, I'll hire you. And so when he was 16 years old, he was making $5,000 a month, which, like, as he says, is a lot of money at the time. It's a lot of money today. He was making $5,000 a month, driving traffic, and grew this business leaps and bounds as a result. So he learned how to drive traffic, and he became a specialist in driving traffic. And the reason I tell Neil's story is I have a lot of respect for Neil, and I listen to Neil's stuff. And he's younger than me. He's about 6 years younger than me. I'm 43. He's 37. But he has a wealth of knowledge I don't have. He's been in business a lot longer than I have. But one of the things he said, and I will never forget it. This was years ago. We're talking like 10 years ago. He said this. He said, do social media as often as you can for the rest of your life, meaning like commit to something and stick to that. And so I committed to once a week. In February of 2019, I committed to once a week. And we're now in March of 2023 when this is being filmed. So that's like 4 years. I have shown up week in and week out for 4 years. I've never missed a week. Or even if I did miss 1 or 2 weeks, it was very rare, and it might have been at Christmas time. So, and then we always still sent out an email because we can, recycle podcast episodes. So that's how I've done it. I've chosen to do a podcast every week live. and I've done it for 181 weeks, I think. This is my 181st episode, I think. I could be wrong. So that's the thing. Do social media as often as you can for the rest of your life. It's not going away, and it's getting better. And you in order to stand out, you have to get better. And one of the mantras that I use with social media is every day and every way I'm getting better and better. I mean, I've been doing social media now since 2008. That sounds like a really long time. It's 15 years. I've been doing social media for 15 years. I'm still learning. I'll do something and we'll look at our analytics and we'll say, well, that's not working. And so let's try something different. And we'll test something out and until it stops working, and then we'll try something different. And so we read our metrics and we respond to those metrics. But thank goodness I only have to do it for one thing a week. And that's important to me. And I have built a very successful business posting once a week. And one of the ways that I've done that is I've leveraged paid advertising, which I'm going to talk about later in another episode. I'm going to talk about all the mistakes I made when I talk about networking and paid advertising, because networking in person and paid advertising, those are the two things that you also need to be doing in your business. They're one and the same. Basically, you do networking if you have no budget for paid advertising. I'll talk about this more in the next episode. And then you do paid advertising when you have no time for networking. That's the way I would put it. I got to a place with networking where I would spend 3 hours going to an event. I would be at that event for like 3 hours, and then I'd spend 3 hours getting home, and that's 9 hours gone. And I would speak to 3 people, or maybe I'd speak to 5 people. If I wasn't on stage where I could speak to everyone in the room, I only got to speak to 4 or 5 or 6 people, and I had great conversations with them, but that wasn't moving my business forward enough. I could spend the same amount of money to get on a train, and come back, go to London, come back, or, go to the event, pay for the event, right? I could spend the ticket to an event. Some of these events like £500. I could take that £500, put it into ads on social media, and I could get 100 people in a Zoom room, right? So that's what I'm talking about. When you don't have time to network anymore, then you lean into paid advertising. I'm going to talk way more about that on another episode. Let me stick with the two things I really want to talk about in this episode, which is building your social media following, converting that social media following to an email list. Very, very important. So what we've done at TechPixies, I show up every single week. I have for 181 weeks. I've created this podcast. And in fact, my team and I are getting really excited because we're about to hit 100,000 downloads, and we're about to hit our 200th episode. And we're trying to figure out, what are we going to do for the 200th episode? And also, actually, we've got a surprise up our sleeve for that one. And also, how are we going to celebrate hitting 100,000 downloads? These are big milestones for me. But I had 0 downloads when I started, and 0 episodes when I started. So that was the route I chose to go down. I chose to go down a podcast. There's basically 3 ways to do social media these days, or three types of content. I talk about this in the social media crash course. I talk about it in the social media superhero bootcamp. The seeds, so think about it like a sunflower. The seeds are the content that you put out every single week. So you've really got 3 kinds of content. You've got blogging content, you've got video content, and you've got podcast content. What I really like about how podcasts are working right now is that a lot of people film their podcasts. I'm filming this so someone can watch it, or they are, and then we have we have show notes that break down what I talked about. You can also have a transcript that people can download and read. And that's your SEO content that goes onto your website. So SEO is search engine optimization. And you have lots of keywords that you're putting in there as you're, of course, planning your podcast episodes maybe a little bit better than I do. But my point is that you've got the written version of the podcast and the show notes that tease the podcast, but also the transcript. That really helps with your SEO. That's your blog side of things. So that's what I love about podcasting is you've got the ability to video it. You've got the sound element for someone who wants to listen on the go. Someone, I'm sure, is listening to this in their car or on their run. I hope you make it to 5K, whatever it is that you're doing. You might be going for a walk, etc. So the podcasting sort of blew up during the pandemic because people were out walking all the time. And it was a great accompaniment to walking. And also people got sick and tired of being on screens so they could listen to something. So that's the deal. those are the 3 types of content you can create. And I talk about this all the time in the Superhero Bootcamp and in the crash course. You can create a podcast, you can create a video, and you can create a blog. Those are the 3 main pieces of content. So I chose podcast. And that was because someone I respected and looked up to said that was the best thing to do. And I trusted her. And so I started doing it 4 years ago. And I'm so grateful that I did. And that was a great choice for me. A lot of tech pixies have gone on to create podcasts. And that has created an authority piece for them. They've been able to interview experts within their industry. Or in fact, I just saw a win in our group where someone, we have every Friday, we do Friday wins where everyone gets to share a win for the week. And one of the wins in our group was that she's been running this podcast for a while, and someone contacted her and said, what you're doing is so important. We want to sponsor your podcast. And so she got an actual transfer of money for someone to support her podcast because they believe in what she's doing. That is the coolest thing ever. And I love that win. And that's the thing. You can monetize podcasts. You can get sponsors. Speaking of which, we're looking for a sponsor. So if you're listening to this and you would like to get some advertising on the Sparkle and Thrive podcast, we have a really loyal fan base, a really beautiful community of people who listen to this podcast. So you could reach out to me and say the same thing. What we talk about here is very important. We talk about women's issues. We talk about financial independence. We also talk about life coaching and neuro coaching, and we talk about social media. 4 things that are really important. And now we're adding in a 5th thing, which is business. How to build a business as a woman. That is so important because women are just not building strong enough, robust enough businesses. And this is what this series is all about. What are the 5 things you got to do to move the needle forward? All right. So social media, you got to do it. Every single week, you've got to do social media full stop. At least one post. Just promise me you will do 1 post. Write it down. I promise myself I will do 1 post every week for the rest of my life. No, just teasing. But 1 post, please get in the habit of doing 1 post. Get in the habit of showing up. Get in the habit of going on video, right? It does not take much to go out on video. I don't have any makeup on. I have a really good light. I have a perma smile when I talk, and I have energy. I bring energy to the table when I am on video, because have you ever watched someone give a video where they have no energy? It's horrible and people stop watching. So get your smile on, get your light turned on, and bring some energy, and you will be just fine. In the Superhero Bootcamp, we have people do a 1-minute live video as part of their homework. And for many women, they've never ever done that. But the thrill of it helps them to realize that it's important and they should do it. And they get over the fear of it. And they're able to do it much easier the next time. I remember the first time I recorded a live podcast. I've always recorded my podcast live. I remember the first time I recorded my podcast live, and it totally freaked me out. It really did. So, I did my hair and makeup that day. And then I realized that was way too much effort to do every single week. And I just was going to show up and be me. And that's when the podcast started to flow for me. Anyway, so social media, you need to have a checklist where you tick off, did I do social media every day? Yeah. Or every week, not every day. Please don't do it every day. You'll burn out. Every week, yes or no, right? And that's what I have. I have a spreadsheet that I've given everyone in the mastermind, and it has a column, and it says, did you do social media this week? And they have to tick it. Yes, I did social media this week, right? It's that, and there's a satisfaction in ticking off the box that, yes, I did my social media this week. Okay, let's talk about the second thing you got to do to move the needle forward in your business. And that's list building. I feel like I've harped about this for years, but no one's listening. So listen to me. There's this new song by Megan Trainor. Is it Megan Trainor? Anyway, it's trending on TikTok now that I'm doing all the TikTok stuff. And she talks about, I'm your mama. Listen to me. Well, here's the deal. Listen to me. List building is very important for businesses. You do not have a list, you do not have a business. A list is extremely valuable. In fact, that is when people sell their business. A huge part of what they're selling is the contact list they've built up. And there's nothing illegal or wrong about that. if one company merges with another company, or if one company is bought by another company, then that's what they're buying. They're buying their client base. They're buying everything in that business, the products that they sell, etc. So that mailing list just moves on over. And one of the reasons that people do mergers and acquisitions is it takes a hell of a long time to build up a mailing list, build up a client base. Well, it can take, I should say that. I shouldn't say it always does, but I've been in this business now for 8 years. Yeah, that's a long time. And, I just heard a statistic, 65% of businesses don't even make it to 10 years. And I am determined to make it to 10 years. I'm making it to 10 years and then beyond. Who knows what's happening after that, but I'm making it to that 10 years. That's important to me. I'm making it to 100,000 downloads on the podcast. I'm making it to episode 200. I'm making it to 10 years in business. I'm doing all of these things. And I'm telling myself that every single day. But trust me when I tell you that it's not been always, a rosy, bumpy, or it's been a bumpy road, not always a rosy, easy road, easy peasy road. We just haven't, it hasn't been easy. So up until now, and we're finding our way and finding our groove. And now I'm starting to share what's working for me. And I'm starting to share it with quite a lot of authority, because I've come back from a really challenging period in business where I had funding, I had support, I had everything I needed to build a really great business. And I still managed to mess it up. And now I've been rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding, and I've had to rebuild it without any funding, with very little support. I mean, I've had support from a lot of people, but not the support that I started with, right? So really important to know that list building is like essential, okay? Now, I was telling this to someone the other day in one of my private coaching calls, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, if you'd explained it to me that way, it would have made so much more sense." So I'm going to explain to you what I explained to her. I have a woman who I work with who is amazing. She's incredible. She's a single mom. She's raising her daughter. She's come out of a really tricky marriage. She's rebuilt her entire life completely from scratch. Like her life burnt down and she rebuilt it. She's an incredible woman. And she's got a job, but she has a dream to build a business, and she wants to do a wig business. So she wants to sell wigs. I did tell her I would love some podcast hair. So if you're listening, well, let's do something about this hair, so I don't actually have to spend any time doing it. I just stick a wig on. Anyway, so she sells wigs, and she did our social media course, right? So she's got 3,500 followers on social media. And I said to her, and she's not making the sales that she wants to make. And I said to her, "Okay, tell me how many people you've got off of social media and onto your email list." She's like, "None." And I said, "Okay, so here's the deal. If you've got 3,500 people on your social media, you should have about 1,750 people on your mailing list. Whatever your social media number is, you should have about half of that on your mailing list." So, at TechPixies, we've got something like 22,000 people on our social media across all the networks, which, by the way, started with 0. We had 0 people in our community when I put up that first social media post years and years and years ago. 0 people, nobody. We now have 22,000, somewhere around there. You should have about half of that on your mailing list. So you should be really good at converting your social media following to your mailing list. I'm going to give you one tip that I gave her, and I also gave another person in our community to start building up that mailing list, especially if you have not been doing any sort of paid advertising, which we'll get into in the next podcast episode. But the tip I gave her was, for people considering buying a wig, there's probably a lot of factors that they're thinking about, right? Like maybe the roundness of their face, or maybe the color of their skin, or maybe maintenance, right? They're thinking about, well, what would I have to do to maintain it? How would I keep it secure on my head? Is it okay to have a wig if I have a full head of hair? There's all sorts of things people might have questions about when it comes to wearing wigs. And really, I said to her, why don't you put together a guide for, which wig is right for me kind of guide. And so she could put this guide together. Now, when I interviewed Dr. Vanita Ratan, she does skincare. So she did a guide on a guide to skincare. And what she did on every single YouTube video after she talked about whatever she talked about, she would say, oh, and go grab my guide, to skincare. And she said for the first like 3 million downloads that she had of her YouTube videos or views of her YouTube videos, she was telling people, go grab my guide, go grab my skincare guide, go grab my skincare guide. So she didn't start out by saying that, because if you start out by saying, go grab my skincare guide, every single thing you do on social media, then people are going to gloss over when you speak about it. So she would give her helpful tip about skincare, and then she'd say, go grab my guide on skincare. So with the wig gal, I said, put together a guide for women about wigs. And then at the end of every social media post, you could say, oh, and by the way, if you don't have it already, go grab my wig guide. Or you're not sure if a wig is right for you, go grab my guide. So that's one way that you can get someone from social media into your mailing list. The other thing about doing that at the end of the video is that if they've watched all the way to the end, chances are they're interested in what you have to say. Now, it was really interesting because Dr. Vanita Ratan was saying she doesn't do it on TikTok because what people do is they go from TikTok to YouTube, and she does it on YouTube. But here's the tip I gave to this lovely lady who was thinking about, well, what do I do now? Because I've got 3,500 followers on social media, but I haven't actually converted any of that to a mailing list. So what I said to her was put together a direct message that is, just like, I'm really delighted that you're a member of my community on Instagram. And I've put together a really special guide just for you to help you decide whether or not you want to get a wig. You can grab it here. If you have any questions, let me know. Now, to me, that's a really uninvasive way of connecting with the people that are following you already. Just know that there's limits to how many direct messages you can send every day. But if you've never direct messaged your followers, you'll be amazed at the connection that you'll make with people just by having that conversation, just by connecting with them. Hey, I was thinking about you today. I appreciate that you're in my community. You probably have some questions about what wig type is right for you. I put together this quiz, or I put together this guide. If you want to grab it, you can grab it here. Do you have any questions about wigs that you want me to answer? Whatever. So you can just send that out and just be methodic about it. Create a spreadsheet. Put all of your followers on there so you can track who you sent it to, who you didn't send it to. You can have notes. Did a conversation ensue? Did they buy wigs? I guarantee you, if she actually does what I just told you to do or told her to do, if she actually does that, she'll get sales just from the conversations. There will be a percentage of people that will feed back to her and will be like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for you to reach out to me about wigs forever. And yes, I want to get one. So I'm not a huge fan of going for the direct sale, like, do you want to buy a wig in the DMs? But I am a big fan of getting people off of social media and onto email so that you can nurture them into the purchase of a wig if it's right for them, right? And the thing is, the person that wants the guide, it's probably someone who's considering buying a wig in the first place. So that's a win-win for everybody. So we got to get people off social media and onto our mailing lists. And what I would suggest is if you're early on in the social media game and you've just started your social media, that's where I want you to start actually creating lead magnets and testing lead magnets and getting people to sign up for your lead magnets. So when TechPixies first started, I tried all sorts of lead magnets. And if you go to the techpixies.com/free resources page, you'll see all the lead magnets that I've tried. They're still there. I've done habit lead magnets. I did the pro rata calculator, how to figure out what you should charge if you're doing social media. That's on our page. I did the social media contest rules. If you want to know what the social media contest rules are, what you can and can't do for social media contests. I've done get started guides. If you go to the free resources page on our website, you will find get started guides for Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, TikTok. In fact, TikTok too. Now I can put my hands up. I ended up hiring someone to create those guides who worked on our team. because they were quite labor intensive. She did an amazing job. She's one of our coaches. She's our YouTube coach, Abby Moore. So those guides are there. So those are other lead magnets we've done. We've done the social media trends report. Every year we put out the trends report, where we do a series of episodes where we interview our social media coaches. We talk about what's happening in social media that year, and we bundle that together. And that's the social media trends report. I also have other lead magnets like the social media crash course and the social media superhero bootcamp and the vision workshop. At the end of all of those is an offer. So not only am I building up a list, but I'm making an offer off the back of that. And there are people that are really grateful that I made an offer. So that's the other thing that I want to talk about. The third thing is networking versus ads, which I'm going to talk about in the next episode. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is making offers. Making offers. If you don't make an offer, people will not buy. They are waiting for you to make an offer. So you've got to make offers, and then you've got to measure things. You've got to measure everything. Well, I'll talk to you about what you should measure, but you definitely need to be measuring. You need to be debriefing your launches. You need to be, reviewing what you did. And when it didn't work, you need to be breaking it down, trying to figure out why didn't it work. And when it works, you got to break it down and figure out, well, why did it work? We're going to talk about that. We do that with social media. In fact, one of the things that we teach in our social media management certification is we give you a dashboard. It cost me £5,000 to build this dashboard. And I give it to all my students who are in social media management certification. We teach them how to track their metrics and how to create benchmarks so they know what's working and what's not working. So we do more of what's working and less of what's not working. And we can track our progress over time and see, what's not working, and let's stop doing that. And what is working, let's do more of that. So I'm a big fan of metrics. And if you're doing your metrics with social media, you can do your metrics with business. But the big mistake is people aren't doing metrics at all. So I'm going to talk about that in part 3. All right. So you just got your clear marching orders in terms of the 2 things you need to be doing to move the needle forward in your business. You need to be doing 1 really good piece of content in social media every week. And when I say really good, I mean just do a piece of content every week. It will get really good over time. Your first social media post won't be really good. You will get much better as you do more and more of it. You will find your voice. You will find your strength. You will find your power, but you're not going to find your voice, strength, or power if you don't do the thing in the first place. So you need to be doing social media content once a week. You need to be converting people from social media to a mailing list, right? And in our social media management certification program, we have something called lead magnet in a day, where we have 83 different ideas for lead magnets. We also have 2 bonuses, which are MailerLite bonuses, where we teach you how to set up MailerLite with a lead magnet. And we also teach you how to brand a newsletter. I mean, these are like amazing bonuses in our social media management certification. So that's the starting point. So if you're a student of ours and you're in our social media training, I want you to go and listen and watch those bonuses. I want you to go set up your lead magnet. I want you to start converting people off of social media onto your mailing list. You don't have to sell anything to them yet, but you need to build up that mailing list, and you need to email them once a week. Now, I say this in the Superhero Bootcamp. I say this in the crash course, and I harp on it over and over again. And then I get in conversations with people and they're not doing it. If you have a mailing list, even if it's 5 people, you need to email them once a week. What do you email them? Your weekly social media content. This is a brilliant way to get them back onto social media, get them engaged with you, but also that way you don't have to create 2 pieces of content, one for your email and one for social. Just combine them into one, right? So very important that you're creating an email every single week, 1 email every single week, 1 social media content every single week. It can be the same thing. And I don't care if it's the same thing or not. I just care that you get it out into the world every single week. So on your spreadsheet, you have a tick box for, did I do social media this week? And you have a tick box for, did I email my list? Right? And you might even want a metric that says how many people downloaded my lead magnet this week. So you have a number of people that you know are downloading your lead magnet, as well as what is my list size. You should be looking at your social media following and your list size every single week. If it is not growing, you are not going to get sales. The sales are in the mails, and you can't get people into your emails if you haven't met him on social media. So this is the starting point. This is what we're establishing with our social media management certification. This is what we're establishing with that first level of training at TechPixies. Getting up a social media following, converting it to a mailing list. If you are a TechPixie and you are listening to this and you haven't done the second part, get that part going. Let this be the day that you say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to set up the mailing list and I'm going to do it. I recently had a one-on-one with one of our masterminders. She was scared to death to send a weekly email. And she'd been delaying it. And I said, right, we're going to do it right now. And we created the email on the one-on-one call. We sent it to her audience. And guess what? She didn't die. And you know what else? People loved it. There were like 70% or 60% of the people who opened it and read it and clicked through it. And she got clients off the back of the email. They emailed her and they said, I want to talk to you. I want to work with you. So every week you do not send an email to your potential customers and clients is another week that you are not going to grow your business. So very, very important. And if you're just starting out and you only have 5 people on your mailing list, well, just put PS, I've got some free consultations going this week. You can book them right here. They can book it on Calendly, free consultation. You have a conversation with them, find out what their problem is. You've got a solution. You send them a proposal and there you go. You can build a business off of 5 clients if you're reaching out to them and letting them know that you're available to do a consultation, right? That's how, when we started at TechPixies, every single person that joined our mailing list, we had a one-on-one conversation with them. And when I ran out of time to do one-on-one conversations, I hired someone to do one-on-one conversations. Juliet Addenbrook. She then became our life coach. She spent so much time talking to women and seeing what they needed that she's like, I got to solve this problem. And she became a life coach. And she's now our head life coach. She's our resident life coach. So Emma Wu also was someone who did all the interviews for us, and she went on to be a counselor, right? So it's a gift to have someone in your business that's willing to talk to people, find out what their problems are so that they can feed back to you what solutions you need to create. But until you don't have the time to do it, you do it yourself. You just say, PS, I've got one spot this week. If anyone wants to jump on a call with me, stick it on Calendly. We got a bonus in our progression program on how to use Calendly, right? So these are software tools that will make your life easier. You want to get people off social media onto email lists, and then you want to get people off of email and you want to make them an offer. We're going to talk about that in the third part. Okay. So the second part, which is coming out next week, is all about networking and paid advertising. When do you do either one? And by the way, all the mistakes I made. And then we're going to talk about making offers and then measuring those offers and the core KPIs that you need to measure to know whether or not your business is moving forward. And I have launched 25 times in the last 12 months. So I know a thing or two about launching, and I know a thing or two about metrics. So I'm going to talk to you about all of those in the upcoming episodes. Bye for now.